Hello, welcome back to the Harmony Inspired Health podcast. In today's episode, we're exploring something I know many of us crave but rarely give ourselves permission to experience, and that is deep stillness, the kind that doesn't rush healing, transformation, or clarity. I'm joined by a very special guest, Lara Day, an energetic teacher, neurogenic Qigong practitioner, and author of 13 Sacred Nights. Through her powerful work, Laura has offered a beautiful invitation to slow down and trust the natural timing of transition. In this conversation, we'll be talking about why inner peace takes time, how solace makes a potent turning point for renewal, and how we can align with seasonal rhythms to support our healing path. So if you're feeling stuck, burnt out, or you're in a transition, then this one is for you. So let's dive in and let's welcome Lara Day to the podcast. Welcome, Lara.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here. Looking forward to diving in with you.
So am I. And it comes at a really beautiful time to record this. I just got back from a trip to Europe that I've been planning for years and years. And I really, for the first time, afforded myself to slow down. And the medicine in that was just so potent, powerful. I mean, amongst that was some 20-kilometer hikes and stuff like that, but that was out in nature and it was like at my own pace and so beautiful. So yeah, I'm really excited to record this episode, especially after like literally just coming back in the last 24 hours. So I really want to dive just straight in, and I want to ask you, why do so many women feel like they're quote unquote doing the work, but they still feel anxious or overwhelmed? Why is stillness so hard in our culture, and why is it essential for transformation?
Man, I mean, I think we are just constantly bombarded with stimulation, and we're born into this culture that's all about, production and more is better and competition. And as you know, all of these divinely perhaps masculine qualities, and the pendulum has swung really far in that direction. And it's we're all sensing that it's time to bring it back in the other direction and find some balance. In my oracle, which we're going to talk about, I teach this practice that's all about quieting down and finding the stillness. And within the oracle, there is an exercise where I ask folks to just schedule in some time in their calendar to do nothing. And I don't mean schedule in a bubble bath or a massage, or like, I literally mean do nothing. And that is actually extremely challenging for most of us and in fact, we don't even really know what that means sometimes. What does it mean to do nothing? So I think our culture just is constantly pulling us out of stillness through all the cycles of nature, whether they're supporting that more external energy or supporting the more internal dive. And the practice that I offer is one that helps us align with the natural energies of the seasons, which some of them are that external pulse, and then some of them are the more internal pulse. And so aligning with nature can really help us find that stillness that is otherwise in this K culture extremely elusive for most of us.
Absolutely. You're speaking my language. Ayurveda aligns everything with the circadian rhythms and with nature. But even myself as a Pitta Vata type of person, so I have that sort of drive and almost feel guilty when I'm just doing nothing because there's so much to achieve in life, that kind of energy. And I did have to pull myself up when we were traveling, because in Europe, a lot of the time they pause between 12 and 2, like all the shops shut down and they have this break. And I'm like, why do they need such a long time for lunch? Come on, guys. There's so much beauty in that as well. Like we live in a completely different culture. I think, America, Australia, and like more like England, like the UK, very similar in that sort of Western culture of hustle and grind till basically it's time for bed. And it's really come at our detriment. And I know with a lot of my clients, I talk about the concept of pratyahara, which is withdrawing from the senses, because as you mentioned, we're just so overstimulated, which is really transitioning into heightened stress and anxiety. So yeah, I totally agree with you. And I'd love to ask you, what does it mean to be okay with the time it takes to reach that sort of inner stillness? And can you speak to the discomfort that people often feel in that sort of in between, like the
Yeah,
stillness?
absolutely. It's almost like squeezing yourself through a portal, right? You have to make your way through those moments where it feels twitchy and you want to jump up and get to your to-do list or reorganize your cupboards or whatever it is, right? Or check your email or check your social media, especially our phones, right? They constantly keep us stimulated and reaching for these dopamine hits. But it is a little twitchy, just like you're saying. You've got to really sort of force yourself to just sit down and be still through that sort of uncomfortable, itchy period, and then you will eventually emerge into the other side and come out into a place where the stillness feels still and it feels peaceful and you're actually enjoying marinating in that quietness. But you're right, it can take some effort to get to that place. So I think that's what people discover when they sit down and try to start a meditation practice for the first time in their life. Like, this is hard, right? I thought I was just supposed to sit here and do nothing. Why does it feel so hard? Why am I so terrible at meditation? And so yeah, it can take a little bit of effort
Yeah.
initially.
Absolutely. And we're going to talk about the 13 secret nights, but I want to just ask before we move on, do you have any tools that help people transition through that twitchy stage as you described it?
Yeah, I mean, there are all kinds of tools and meditations and tricks and tips, and a lot of them are in the Oracle deck. I actually had the opportunity creating the second edition with my new publishers to go back and add in a meditation ritual for each of the 52 cards in the Oracle deck. And so there are 52 different tools and tips and ways of finding that stillness for, getting more tuned in to our intuition, our higher self, that something greater, however, whatever you think of, or name, however you name these things. But there's the simple ones. There's the breath.
Mm,
There is one tool that I really like to use is actually sound. And by sound, I mean that when we sit down to meditate, often people, especially moms, will feel like there are things that are pulling our attention away from our meditation. The noise of my children are bickering in the background is distracting me from my meditation, or the dog barking outside, or the sound of the leaf blower, or whatever it is that we get irritated, like it's distracting us from our meditation. And I like to remind people that sound is always and only passing through in the present moment. So rather than feeling that it's a distraction from your meditation, you can use it as an anchor you into the present. Because when we're meditating, that's always, what we're attempting to do is anchor ourselves in the present, right? As opposed to being pulled out by thoughts about the past or anxieties about the future. And so sound, that's a real simple tool, is just opening your ears. If you sit down and are attempting to be still or quiet or meditate, is just opening your ears and allowing every single noise that you register to remind you to come back to the present.
yeah, that's beautiful. And I do find I wrote in, also just published my book, Ayurveda and Alchemy of Her. And I do talk about utilizing the senses, but in a controlled way to bring yourself into the present. So not letting our senses run away with us, because that's the whole opposite idea of pratyahara, which is bringing them inwards. And so, as you mentioned, the sound, like hearing and maybe listing three things that you can hear around you in your environment when you're starting to get stressed and your thoughts are running away with you. And then three things you can see and three things you can smell and what can you taste in your mouth, and really engaging the senses to that present moment. Even doing that before you sit down into that sort of stillness. And as you mentioned, the breath, like I'm a Vedic breathwork practitioner. I absolutely love the breath. I think that really sort of brings us into the present moment, especially if we are those who have that racy mind and can't just sort of sit in stillness and meditation. It gives us something to focus on until we sync so naturally with it that it just brings us into one unity with ourselves, our breath, mind, spirit, everything. So I love that. And I would love to know, what is these 13 sacred nights rituals? Like, how does this work? How is this going to help someone move through the twitchy stage into this really owning the stillness and tapping into their higher self?
Yeah. So the 13 Sacred Nights is a winter solstice practice.
Mhm.
So it's done at the darkest time of the year, right? When we have the longest nights and the shortest days. And this is really a time, if we just pay attention to what nature is doing all around us, the trees have dropped their leaves. Animals are hibernating or slowing down at the very least. Plants and grasses have typically receded back into the earth. So there's this feeling of everything sort of conserving energy or drawing energy inward, right? Now, in the Northern Hemisphere, during the peak of winter, we're typically at our most frantic because it's the winter holiday season, right? So I talk a lot about that when I tend to speak to audiences that are more in the Northern Hemisphere. But in Australia, you still have this opportunity with the 13 Sacred Nights to tune into the rhythm of the seasons. And one of my personal underlying core philosophies is that the more we align with nature, the more we align with our own highest human potential. And so what the Sacred Nights does is it asks us to tune in to the stillness and the darkness of midwinter. That the energies around us are actually supporting this inward dive and this moment to pause and rest and reflect on the cycle gone by, on the year past, and then set our intentions for the year moving forward. So in the Southern Hemisphere, you it's a little bit, just slightly takes a little bit more brain power because you have to think of your cycle as June through July, right? Or
Yeah.
is that,
We're just
yeah,
yeah, we're just coming out we've just come out of our winter
yes, exactly. And so that,
at the time of recording, so this will be a bit later.
yes, so the winter solstice in the Southern Hemisphere is typically around June 21st,
Mhm.
right? And so that's the beginning of a new cycle of seasons. And this practice is about aligning with the seasons, not the arbitrary January through December calendar that, we all sort of schedule our lives to in the modern world, right? So you've sort of got to reset and readjust to think about your yearly cycle as winter, spring, summer, fall. Winter is this time of incubation. We're in the radiant darkness. We're in what I call the womb of winter. And we have the opportunity to plant our dream seeds, our intentions, right, in the fertile soil of the darkness so that they'll sprout in the spring. And then in the summertime, we're in full bloom. We are living the dream that we planted, that we dreamt in the womb of winter, right? We're fully expanded. We're out in the world. We're doing all the things. In the fall, we experience this richness, the fruits of our labor. Maybe we're, deciding what to throw on the compost pile, what to keep for another cycle of seasons before diving back in. So the practice really begins to teach us how to ride the wave of these seasonal energies as opposed to fighting the wave or ignoring it completely and then often just getting, drug under by the white water because we have no idea, not paying attention to what's going on, in the energetic realm around us. But it teaches us to ride that wave of the seasons, to align with these natural energies. And it's really just shockingly empowering to do that. Yeah.
Absolutely. And it's a concept we call in Ayurveda Ruturya, which is dinacharya is like our daily routine and rhythms, but Ruturya is our seasonal. And so it definitely is something that we practice in the Ayurvedic realm of things. And it's so enlightening because it really does help support our body, even like our digestive system and the different enzymes we produce and the different seasons if we're aligning. And I think even if you're speaking of the winter solstice with the 13 nights ritual, but even if we look at it as the cycle of the woman's body, so if we've got a menstrual cycle, we've got those 4 seasons in the cycle as well that we can sort of bring some of these concepts into because we have that sort of our natural cyclical living within our micro organism as our human body as well. So I love all that. Can you share how aligning with the seasonal transition supports physical, mental, and the energetic clarity? And how does this relate to? So when you talk about like the 13 sacred nights, are you talking about the first 13 nights from the 1st of June, are you? Or is it a 13 night?
Yes. So the structure of the practice is that the practice actually begins on the solstice, but we have 3 days to prepare. You have during this time of preparation, you might be thinking about, you might be reflecting on the cycle gone that's passed, right? Taking a glance back, what worked, what didn't work, what do I want to do differently, and then thinking about what you want to bring into this magical window. So the actual 13 nights begin on the 24th, sundown, the evening of the 24th. That would be the first sacred night, carrying through until sundown on the 25th. That would represent an imprint or impression of the entire cycle to come. And then the following 12 nights represent the following 12 calendar months. So what you're really doing is you're creating an imprint, almost like an energetic foreshadowing of the coming cycle. And there's two main kind of things that we're doing during this time. The first thing is to receive. So what do I mean by receive? Really, you're just paying attention. This is an opportunity to get extremely present and to listen deeply for cues, downloads, hints, symbols, signs from the realm of spirit, source, God, the field, again, whoever, however you name that something greater. But you're really just getting extra present and writing everything that transpires, whether it's externally, happenings in your external world, or internally, thoughts and dreams, etc. You're writing it all down in a journal, along with drawing an oracle card for each night. So you're creating this rich roadmap of information that has been offered to you. I like to think of it as well as, the word solstice literally means sun stands still. So sol meaning sun and sistere meaning to stand still is where the word solstice came from. And so on that third day, after our 3 days of preparation, the light begins to stream back in, right? And I think of this universe as fractal in nature. So it's as if we're catching the first light, the first offering, the first bit of that fractal that's going to continue to unfold throughout the year. So we're getting this little foreshadowing or this sneak peek. And that information that we're gathering becomes the tools and the wisdom that we will desperately need to help guide us through the challenges and adventures of our coming year. So that's all the first thing is just the receiving bit, the just being present. And then the second piece is that it's co-creation. And so we have this opportunity to offer our intentions, right? Again, to this stream of light that's moving through and is going to be swept right into our future in honestly the most magical way. So we are again listening, receiving, and then also giving, right? Co-creating this roadmap for the coming year. And I've lost track of what your initial question was, but
I think the practice, the actual ritual of it all sounds so beautiful. And I'm like, no, our winter's just passed.
that's okay. That's okay. Here's the thing, which you already briefly mentioned, is that, these rhythms and the pulse of nature is with us in large arcs, right? We have the solar arc, which is the solar cycle, the solar year. And then, you were saying like on a daily basis, right? We have sunrise and sunset. We have the new moon and the full moon. There are many people who are, there's a whole movement to journal and set your intentions during the new moon, right? Which is just like the winter solstice of the moon cycle versus the sun cycle, right? So there's all kinds of ways that you can incorporate these ideas into your life before next winter, and then by the time winter rolls around, you'll be very excited and very ready to dive into this ritual.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was just asking about how aligning with the seasonal transitions, and now you've mentioned, the winter solstice, but also the daily cycles that we have, the new moon, etc. How it can support our physical, mental, and energetic clarity.
Yes. Oh my gosh. In every way and so profoundly on the physical level, on the emotional level, on a spiritual level. I really believe, again, that the more we align with nature, right, the more we're aligning with our own highest human potential. And that means in physical health, That means in emotional well-being and stability, and that means our highest spiritual selves and our ability to cultivate a higher consciousness. So I think in every way that we can lean in to aligning with these rhythms and aligning with nature, whether that's eating seasonally, rising with the sun, getting the light of the sunrise in your eyes and on your skin, getting out into the daylight throughout the day to receive all the different frequencies that are available. And again, getting the light of the sunset in your eyes and on your skin, helping to hone our circadian biology and our physical health in that way. But of course, when we're physically healthy, we're much more emotionally healthy as well. And Qigong, which is my practice, we talk about the three levels of Jing, Qi, Shen, or physical, emotional, and mind or spiritual thought, Shen. And they're all connected. They're not separate, right? They're flowing into one another. They're affecting one another. And so when you support the physical, you're also supporting the emotional and the spiritual. Or when you support the spiritual, you're supporting the other two. They're all bleeding into each other. They were never separate to begin with, right? And so when we uh, align with these cycles, or just begin to pay attention to them, just stepping out at night and noticing what the moon looks like on a nightly basis, not checking on your phone what phase is the moon in, right? But actually stepping outside to take a look, right? I just think it's more valuable than we recognize. And when you make these little shifts and these little changes, the rewards are greater than you might suspect.
Oh, absolutely. And I teach on circadian rhythm all the time, but I really experienced how powerful it was in these last few days because, like I said, it's only been just over 24 hours since I got home from Europe, which is a completely opposite time zone. So over there, it's like nighttime. Here, it's morning time. And it was a 26-hour journey home. Australia's
Yeah,
so far away from everywhere. So
yeah,
26 hours. And I'm
it's a
like, oh
long,
my
it's a
so
long
long.
journey.
I'm like, "Oh my gosh, I'm gonna be so wrecked." Like, it's crazy, and I thought, "No, hang a minute." Like, we can align using the Ayurvedic principles, aligning with the circadian rhythm, and as you said about, like, having that natural sunlight, the first thing you see, it's exactly what we did this morning. It's like, I said to my husband, "Let's sleep with all of the windows open, all of the blinds open." So the minute that natural sunlight, comes into our room, and with a lot of windows, it's going to automatically start to sync and align our bodies with the circadian rhythm. And as soon as light hits the retina, it reduces the melatonin production, which you want to sleep, but you don't want to wake up. And it's all about sort of fascinating how when we really look at how the body works and how the hormones work with the circadian rhythm, we can, the fancy word these days is biohack, but really it's just
Yeah,
aligning with the natural circadian rhythm. And, I'm here
yeah,
today, I'm showing up and I'm feeling fine. And I honestly believe it's just all of those little sort of biohacking circadian rhythm hacks that I
yeah.
did to support it. Yeah.
Yeah, and most of the most powerful ones are free, right? I mean,
Absolutely.
you
Yeah.
can buy yourself a really expensive red light panel, or you can get out in the sun at sunrise and sunset.
Yeah, totally. And like you were talking about moon gazing, like that is such a powerful, powerful act for, someone who's stuck in their head, who's very vata or especially very pitta, like in work mode all the time and, high achieving goal anxiety. Doing that moon gazing and just connecting to that lunar cycle is so powerful for resetting our body as well. I want to shift the conversation a little bit into divine timing because I know you speak a lot about divine timing. And this is an interesting one because I know a lot of people are thinking, like, how do we trust
Mm.
that in the divine timing, but also when we're in the modern chaos of our life, like it's so hard to trust in that divine timing when we're really wanting something to happen, whether that's healing or a job offer or growing our business or learning how to be still, whatever that is. So can you speak on divine timing and how we can really trust this?
Yeah. Oh man. I feel like getting a little bit vulnerable here. I'm not sure if it's the right thing to do, but in my life, I won't go into the details, but I have some really, really challenging situations happening with my family right now, and just honestly unfolding in the last handful of days. I have dropped into a new level of trust in that divinity which you're speaking to. And not because I wanted to, but because I had no other option. I think sometimes when we hit these moments that feel so rock bottom is when we really understand what it means to surrender. And up until we do come up against these things in our lives that are not solvable, we tend to be constantly bickering with life, right? Constantly pushing and pulling and attempting to control and wanting to control. And sometimes it's really intense circumstances to get you to finally drop that. And honestly, that's something that's really been on my heart and mind in the last handful of days. So yeah,
Sorry to hear that you are going through family things, but I'm happy that you've surrendered and you're waiting for that divine timing because it
yeah,
does for all of us, but it is hard. Like it is hard to trust.
it really is. Yeah,
Don't because there is so much of that divine power outside of us that we can't always see what's best for our future until we allow it to become who it
right.
becomes. Yeah,
Yeah,
beautiful.
and I think trusting that, that idea that even something that is extremely difficult in this moment can blossom into something beautiful in the future,
Yeah.
in ways that are just i- we are completely unable to access or see from this point in the timeline.
Totally. So many no's that I've had handed to me are like, at the time you think it's such a setback or it's such a disappointment, but those no's were just opening the door and possibilities to other things that if I have had a yes in that time would have completely changed the trajectory of my life and it
Right.
wouldn't have worked out where I'm supposed to be now. So
Yeah.
yeah.
What if the worst thing that ever happened to you turns out to be the best thing that ever happened to you?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. And so do you have any final words of wisdom that you would like to share with women about really tapping into their stillness, into these rituals you speak of, into this? It's such a beautiful and whole lifestyle really that you're speaking of. If they're wondering like how can I actually get started? Like this all sounds wonderful, it all sounds beautiful, but I've got a chaotic job, I've got kids, I've got
Yeah.
all of this stuff going on in my life and I want this so bad, but how can I actually support myself to start this, prioritize myself to start this?
Yeah, I think just start in little ways. It doesn't have to be all or nothing. It can be a really simple rule in the morning, sunshine before screens. For as much time as you can afford, even if it's 30 seconds, step outside before you turn on your screens and start your workday. Eating a little bit more seasonally, it can be small gestures and just leaning into nature to support as much as possible. And again, the most powerful things are often free and actually quite simple to implement. Just sort of, it doesn't occur to us, right? Or we're so used to just chugging along in this man-made land of separation that that we forget to step outside and look at the moon, right? These things aren't difficult. We just have to remember. And so, it doesn't have to be all or nothing. It can start with small gestures and just slowly make your way towards aligning with nature a little bit more.
Beautiful. And before we let the listeners know where we can get the oracle cards, maybe we should just explain what oracle cards are. I'm sure most of my listeners will know, but you never know. There could be
Yeah.
beautiful new listeners that are tuning in for the first time and they're like, oracle cards? What are you talking about?
Yeah, yeah. So oracle cards are like tarot cards, right? If you've ever, but the tarot is really a very specific system, and so oracle cards are the much more generic. There's fairy cards these days, and angel cards, and I don't know, probably Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle cards. Somebody once said it's for everything, right? And so the oracle deck that I created is specific in that it teaches this winter solstice practice, which most other Oracle decks do not. And an Oracle deck typically is just a set of cards, and you draw a card. It explains, typically in the deck how to do that, and then the card will have some kind of message or bit of wisdom to go along with it. So that's really what an Oracle deck is.
Yeah. I love Oracle decks. I've got so many of them and I use them for all of my events. And it's, yeah, it's a really beautiful way, obviously to connect to self and to use as a tool to understand your own intuition of what the Oracle message is presenting to you in that time. But it's also a beautiful way to connect with others if you are like facilitating groups or even family, sitting around the table and sort of pulling cards and speaking of that just gives more depth to your everyday conversation that you might be having as well. And so where can we get your beautiful oracle cards from?
Yeah. So the cards they are now distributed by my publishers Beyond Words through Simon and Schuster. So they're on all the, they're on Amazon and Simon and Schuster, and I think there's books a million, books.org, all kinds of places, but you can also just go to my website, which is Lara, Lara. Do not sneak a U in there. It's Lara J Day DAY. So LARAJDAY.com. And I have the links to the places where you can purchase the cards there.
Beautiful. And your website links will be in the show notes as well. Amazing. Well, thank you, Lara, for this beautiful guide and this profound reminder that we can all access our stillness. It can be sacred, it can be subtle, it can be rooted in rhythm, the circadian rhythm, the seasonal rhythms. I really love that. And you've definitely inspired us to slow down and to honor the space between and to trust the sacred unfolding of our lives as well. So thank you so much for joining us. And to our beautiful listeners, if you feel a little nudge to pause, listen to it. If you feel a nudge to journal, to honor the upcoming solstice, if you are in that side of the world, then go and grab Lara's 13 Sacred Nights practice. And because it's something that you really may be missing in your life and can really support you. Until next time, stay embodied, stay curious, and trust the wisdom within your own timing. Namaste. Thank you.
Thank you.